How did you get into this?
Having had a problem dog and not getting the answers that I wanted. So I learned myself, and the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn, and volunteered at 2 humane societies in Alberta, took workshop classes, foster dogs, own dogs. Our last 3 dogs were rescues, not that they had to be, but it just turned out to be that way. Keep walking. Good boy. And yeah, rest is history.
So you've welcomed a new puppy to the family. Maybe you've adopted a rescue dog. Now the question is training. Puppy socialization classes, perhaps. Obedience training? Maybe there's some particular issue this dog needs help with. So is group training or individual training the thing to do? Well, today on NSK9, we try to get to the bottom of that and give you some answers. What you do is different than taking your dog to puppy socialization or, basic obedience classes.
Yeah.
So can you explain that difference? Like, because people are going, oh, what is it that I need?
So I don't train per se what's often trained, the sit or heel, or that what you would find normally in obedience class. I do some training, but I just really specify on the things that I need as information exchange. Leave it, so I want you to walk away from that, or wait, don't move. Let people walk away or create more distance. This way, turn the other way, or just walk with me. I teach non-pulling. We sometimes have a little bit of a tight leash if he wants to go somewhere, but I have a long line, 10 feet, and I have a comfortable body harness. So I don't micromanage. I don't train for the point of that I specify a position, but I want to train for manners, and then it's just to create safety for a dog. So almost all behavioral problems happen because the dog is either overstimulated or overwhelmed, feels threatened, or overstimulated, or just frustrated. Okay. And so what I want to create is, or what I try to identify is, what kind of an environment works for the dog. What does this dog actually need? I teach my clients what I feel they need to be doing to create an optimum environment for the dog. And then usually the behavioral problems disappear. Okay. And the few things I do train, and this is just really when my dog needs information, or when I really have to tell my dog, look, you have to wait before we cross the road because there's like 5 cars coming. You can't run across the road right now.
Private versus group training for a dog is a bit like the difference between a personal trainer and group class at the gym. Like Janet, Stephen Haynes has always specialized in one-on-one training. While he used to do that in person, it's now online. And his clients have included A-list celebrities around the world.
At some point, I think at this point I would consider myself a behavior and training consultant for dogs.
Sounds very...
It's different than what it used to be. I would have always said before that I was a trainer, but to do that I think you actually have to be there in person.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So you don't see dogs in person anymore?
Not anymore. I see clients all over the world on the computer, but I don't really see any in person. A large chunk of my clientele are people that have puppies, and I mostly help them through the imprinting stage of puppies, early puppy training, early puppy socialization, things like that. And then the other chunk of my business is clients that just have problems. They have questions and they can't get the answers that they're looking for.
You do a lot of stuff with,
This way.
say, reactive dogs or dogs that are scared of cars and sort of those very specific,
Good boy. Keep walking.
say, a problem somebody's having, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, my dog's just poorly behaved all the time. Often you're dealing with a very specific issue. How do you approach something like that? Like if I come to you and say, you know, my dog's scared of cars or...
Usually I do in homes, so I go into people's homes. Or outside.
And that's important, isn't it? To see the dog in the environment that they're having the problem in.
Yeah, I think so. Because I want to see exactly the dynamics. Often there's, you know, sometimes there's other dogs there or, you know, a whole bunch of family members, maybe a newborn baby that could affect the dog's behavior, cats, whatnot. And so it's really good to see that and to sit down and to do this whole thing comprehensively.
So I get a new puppy. Mm-hmm. There's a million classes out there, from like puppy socialization to early obedience to just urban dog training and everything. And then private and then virtual.
Yep.
How do I know what's right?
You don't. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to personality. I didn't ever do group classes or anything like that. And I believe that the clients would get more out of that ultimately. And I believed that when you have a dog, you need the training tailored to how you live with that dog, not how that group class that you go to thinks you should live with the dog. Now, that's not to say there's not benefit in classes at all. There absolutely is. They, you know, they teach you the basic commands and things like that that are important. But with what I do, I sort of teach the skills that the dogs need in order to do those commands. So I'm taking everything back even one step further than most of the classes or most of the books you'd pick up do. And sort of, instead of the foundation, like most people would say it, I'm digging the footings.
So, I mean, there's things that you can't teach doing this way. Like you obviously can't socialize puppies.
No, I mean, you know, with my clients, we'll talk about how to accomplish that in different ways. You know, what to look for when you go take the dog out with other dogs that are at the same level of vaccinations and things like that. So we'll talk through all of that stuff, but I certainly cannot do it with what I do. And that's one of the reasons that I always recommend clients have in-person training of one form or another.
The working theory is something called domestication syndrome. So basically, thousands of years of selecting for tame behaviors in our wild dogs to get our domesticated dogs. We've inadvertently selected a type of cell called neural cells to kind of downregulate them, and they're responsible for cartilage formation. So we think that plays a part. So we tend to see floppy ears, shorter snout or muzzle, coat color changes, and that's what we think, but then there are some domestic dogs that have erect ears naturally, so it's not perfect. We're still learning, but that's kind of the thought process at this time.
Keep walking. And so I help him out. There's nothing wrong with this, you know. I mean, when children are stuck and when people are stuck, when we were stuck, when we were learning something new, we'd like to have someone help us along.
Yeah.
And I don't see any need for harshness when we're working with our dogs.
Can you help a dog be less reactive? Is that possible?
Totally.
Yeah?
Yeah, totally. Again, it depends on the dog, and sometimes it takes time and it takes patience. So we have one coming towards us who's looking at him. I tell him to keep going on. Good boy. Good job.
Now, did he always ignore other dogs?
No.
Or is that something you had to...
When we got him, I couldn't get him within 20 feet of another dog.
Oh, really?
He was doing exactly that. Yes, good boy. But now he wants a treat, right? He says, hey, I did good. I did.
It's all about the food.
I didn't retaliate here. And I said, I did a good job, all done. And then when I'm finished and he doesn't get any more, tell him that too.
Okay.
Right? That is that piece of information. I don't leave him in a mental vacuum
Okay.
to guess what's happening next. I tell him that. Reinforcement is something the dog wants, right? It's not something that the person thinks is good enough. And I like to tell my clients to sort of really dig down and see what they really like, what they want to be reinforced by. Sometimes it's also a little bit of a dance. If the reinforcement is too high, they can't think anymore.
Yep.
That can also happen. But
It just becomes too exciting.
it becomes too exciting. They become too frantic for it.
With so many approaches and options for dog training, it can be overwhelming to know who to approach for help with the issue you're trying to solve. How do you recommend somebody choose a trainer?
What I tell my clients online, because I do always tell my online clients that it's good to have someone on the ground with them to physically show them how to do a couple of things. I can take them a fair distance down the road using demonstrations on the computer and talking them through different scenarios, but sometimes you need somebody there. I always tell my clients, I make it very clear, interview several dog trainers and talk to them. If you can talk to them on the phone for 5 or 10 minutes, do that. And then after you talk to all of them, pick the one that you would most like to go have a beer with. And that's the one you should use. Because if there's some kind of connection like that, they're going to be able to listen to what that trainer says, they're going to believe what the trainer says, and they're going to, they'll ultimately do what the trainer tells them to do. I had a lady in San Francisco last night. She's a software engineer. So we related what she was doing to the dog to if-then statements in programming, which she immediately got. And then I have other people that are artists, and we talk about mixing colors and how that relates to training the puppy. So it's very interesting to me to be able to do it that way. And it's an avenue for the training that I think helps the clients, because we're not just all about the dog. We're more about how these people look at the world and how that relates to their dog.
While it might not always be possible, for example, when adopting an older dog or a rescue, both Janet and Stephen agree there's one thing in a dog's past that can make a lot of difference. How much impact does breeding have on later dog behavior?
I think a lot. There's a genetic component, so not just the breed, but also the line that's being bred. Whatever's going on in the parent is showing up in the kids. It's just how genetic works.
I think a lot of people wouldn't think that, would they?
Yeah, it's it's just how it goes. It's biology. But then also, it's really important how the litter is being raised, what they're exposed to, whether they're being, gently experienced hands is something good when they're little. Safety in resources, enough nutrition, good nutrition, enough of it there so that there's no scarcity of basic needs, safety, not being scared, not being beat up by other dogs, that sort of thing is crucial.
You are working with breeders now.
I was lucky enough in my career over the years to get to deal with a lot of breeders across the U.S., Canada, no breeders in Europe and Southeast Asia as well. But some of the really high-end breeders that I deal with, they decided that they wanted to start designing programs for their puppies for socialization, imprinting, and everything before the puppy shipped out to the owners. These breeders want to send out the best dogs they can, so we worked on the programs to help get those puppies ready to go to their homes. And then what they decided after that is they wanted more contact with their clients after the fact and support their clients. So I now, contract with a number of breeders to deal with their clients before they get the puppy. We usually have what we call a puppy prep session. So I'll talk to the clients that are going to receive the puppy usually about a month before they get the dogs, and we'll talk through any issues, concerns that those people have. And then I'll follow through with that client as they run up to getting the puppy right after they get the puppy. And some of them keep me on all the way through the imprinting stage and longer to do virtual work on training and socialization. And others move into using an in-person trainer that they have. And I have, you know, that business has changed because I have more and more clients now that are using me as well as an in-person trainer. A chunk of what I've done in my career is actually pick puppies for clients. You know, if I've got a client that's a musician, you know, that's on tour, you have to have a dog that can handle the changes in environment all the time. And we would be very careful about picking a puppy with a really stable personality, as much as we can at 6, 7, 8 weeks old. We would weed out
the breed and temperament.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You factor all of that in, and then you start looking at the absolute personality of the puppy. And you know, you look at 10 puppies, you're going to have some that are a little uptight, nervous. Well, those probably aren't a really good one for somebody that's in a different town every night. Right? You've got some that are like super outgoing. Well, that might even not work either for somebody that's doing that. But then you've got the kind of the middle tier there, and we would look for that. And I've done that many, many times over the years.
They seem to. Whether or not their jealousy is the same as humans or as complex, but we do think they do. So if they deem another dog as a rival, or they're getting attention taken away from them by another dog, or sometimes even children, you might notice them pulling at their leash or barking or running up to you and nudging your hand off the other dog that you're petting. But yeah, those are typically jealousy behaviors.
Humans work very well in gray area, right? Most of us do, not all of us, but most of us work really well in gray area. Dogs don't work in gray. They like black and white. They like to know what's going to happen next. They like the routine. They like the regimentation. They like the schedule. They like all of that stuff. And a lot of the behavioral issues that I end up dealing with clients are coming from not maintaining that routine, that schedule, that regimentation. And that's hard for us. I'd rather sit on the couch and, you know, look at the Facebook feed for a few extra minutes instead of take the dog out too. But when you got a puppy, if you establish those routines early in their imprinting period, they carry through later in life, and it makes life much easier with the dog.
I think that can put a lot of pressure on a dog if they are not allowed to live out their nature in one way or another. Like, for example, not being allowed to sniff or play or dig or run. Or socialize, for that matter, if that's what they want to do. Absolutely. It creates a lot of pressure. It's like, and especially if those, even more so in those purebred dogs, you know, that were bred for decades, for centuries, to do a certain function. And then suddenly we completely eliminate that out of a dog's life and put them in a crate all day long or half a day, and then they get a walk, a leash walk around the block where they get 2 feet off leash when they needed like 20.
For puppies, they really like everything to be very regimented, very orderly, very, you know, time sensitive. And humans have a difficult time, for the most part, adapting to that early on. And a lot of what I do is try to train people, you know, you're going to take that puppy out every 25 minutes when it's awake and moving around.
Because dogs like structure, don't they?
They like structure a lot. They do not like chaos. It's very hard on them. Puppies and older dogs, very, very difficult for them to deal with that.
When children are stuck, and when people are stuck, when we were stuck, when we were learning something new, we'd like to have someone help us along.
Yeah.
And I don't see any need for harshness when we're working with our dogs. If they would know better, they would do better. It's up to us to teach them better.
So they're just confused sometimes.
They're sometimes confused because the commands, if they're trained, they're not clear.
Okay.
The treatment isn't clear. It's not consistent.
If you have one piece of advice for people getting a new puppy.
Train it. Start training early. Yeah, there's an old wives' tale in dog trainer land, like you don't start training the dog until it's 6 months old. On one angle, there's some truth to that. Dogs more mature, can pay attention longer and all that. But if you don't start training until that point, what you're going to be doing is fixing lots of bad behaviors before you ever start moving forward on the good stuff. So my clients, we will start with that puppy the instant it arrives at their house. When I have new clients that are starting up, I'll have them doing training exercises the day the puppy gets there, teaching the puppy its name, teaching it to walk into the crate, teaching it to turn and look at them when they say the puppy's name. We start that the very day it arrives, and we kind of progress from that. So if you got a puppy, start training right away.
Training the dog or training the person?
It's always training the people. I'm sure you've run across that in all of your work you've done, but no, it's almost always training the people and teach them how to do things and what to do when.
What do you wish people would think about or think ahead about in terms of behavior in their dogs or training? Or
Before they get a dog, to do research, check their own lifestyle, and then check what fits.
Because people get the wrong breeds a lot, don't they? For their lifestyle.
I find sometimes they really underestimate the dog and overestimate their skill.
If you live in the downtown and you like to come home to your apartment at night and sit and watch Netflix for hours and you don't run, you don't do things like that, don't buy a Vizsla, right? That's a bad choice. You can have the dog, but you're going to have to make some accommodations for the dog.
So often what you get is if you put yourself in between, the dog kind of, dodging and wants to look around you. Usually if a dog wants to be behind and says, I'm not going to deal with it, you deal with it, I don't, they move themselves behind you or on the other side. Yeah, patience. It's not a rat race. In a lifetime of a dog, between, 10, 12, 14 years, depending on the dog, depending on the breed, it doesn't matter if they get there 2 weeks before or later, if there's not a severe behavioral issues, but especially with the severe behavioral issues, you need patience. It doesn't fix itself in 2 weeks or less. So to be patient and to be gentle, to help the dog out instead of commanding or demanding things that they haven't learned to do or they can't do because they're in the wrong environment. Dogs are never bad on purpose. They really aren't.
From acupuncture to Chinese medicine and water therapy, if you're looking for a change in treatment for your dog, well, there's one veterinary hospital that might be just the thing. That's next time on NSK9.
So I think that's really important to think about their emotional well-being and their mental well-being as well, because a lot of these dogs, that is what they do for enjoyment, and it can be frustrating for them and it can be depressing for them when they can't do the things that they want. And sometimes we can get them back to doing their favorite things, or sometimes we can help the owner modify them. It's like, okay, well, it's not going to be safe for him to do this, but what if we did it this way? Then it would still be safer, but they still get some of the joy. Like, for example, if your dog has chronic knee disease because he's had bilateral cruciates and he's still got arthritis in both his knees, chuck it is never going to be the favorite game for me, right? Where the dog's running and twisting and turning because it's bouncing, but maybe we could use something else.